The restaurant was alive with sound that evening, a steady mix of clinking glasses, hushed conversations, and soft piano music that floated from the corner of the room. Every table was full, every guest dressed in fine suits and sparkling dresses. The chandeliers above cast a golden light across polished tables, and waiters moved quickly yet gracefully, carrying plates that looked like art. The boss stood near the counter, his arms crossed, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd like a captain watching over his ship. He was a man in his 50s, tall, serious, with lines on his face that showed years of hard work. He had built this place from nothing, brick by brick, recipe by recipe, until it became one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. And tonight was his proudest night of the week, a night when the wealthiest guests came to dine, and every detail had to be perfect. He hated mistakes, hated anything that disturbed the careful image he had created, and so he watched, waiting for something to go wrong. Then it happened. The heavy glass door at the front opened, and a silence fell across the nearest tables. A couple stepped inside, and from the very first glance, they seemed out of place. Their clothes were old, the man's jacket a little too loose, the woman's dress faded from many washes. Their shoes carried dust, maybe mud, and their faces, though kind, were tired. They looked around with uncertain eyes, as though they had walked into a place they weren't sure they belonged. A few guests raised their eyebrows, some leaned in to whisper to their companions, and others simply stared with open disapproval. In a room where diamonds sparkled and perfumes filled the air, this couple looked like strangers who had wandered into the wrong world. The boss felt his jaw tighten. His first thought was irritation. He had worked too hard for this restaurant to allow it to look cheap or disorderly, and he knew how quickly rumors spread in this city. If people said his restaurant was too open, or that it allowed anyone to eat there, his reputation might suffer. He stepped forward slightly, but before he could speak, the couple approached the host stand. The man cleared his throat and asked, in a polite and almost shy voice, if there was a table available. The host froze, unsure how to answer. Every table was indeed full, but the tone of the man's question carried a sense of hope, as though he truly believed they could belong here. The boss frowned deeper. Around him, he heard the low laughter of one of his wealthy guests, a man in a silk tie who whispered, "Can you believe this? Bread and butter faces in a place like this." The boss ignored the comment, though his pride stung. He had spent years making this restaurant a symbol of success, a place only the best could enjoy. Now he faced a decision. He could turn them away at once and protect his image, or he could allow them to stay and risk the judgment of his loyal customers. He studied them closely. The woman's hands were folded neatly, her eyes lowered, her smile faint but warm. The man stood tall, not arrogant, but firm, as though he had made a choice to come here and would not back down easily. Something about them was unusual. They did not look ashamed of their clothes, nor did they look nervous of the stares. They carried themselves with quiet confidence, the kind that made the boss wonder. But then the whispers around the room grew louder. A woman in pearls shook her head. A man lifted his glass and muttered about standards. The boss felt pressure building. His pride told him that this couple did not belong. His instincts told him something about them was different. Suspense clung to the air like a storm waiting to break. The couple waited calmly for an answer, their eyes steady, their bodies still, as though time did not trouble them. The boss looked at them one last time and thought, who are they, and why are they here? It was a question that would not leave his mind, a question that would lead to a night he would never forget. The boss finally stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor, his eyes fixed on the couple who stood at the host stand. The restaurant had grown quieter, as though everyone was waiting to see what he would do. He gave a small nod to the host, then turned his sharp gaze toward the man and woman. "I'm afraid we are full tonight," he said in a firm but controlled voice, the kind that carried across the room. The man gave a polite nod, his expression calm, and replied, "We understand, sir, but perhaps there is a small table, even in the corner." "We don't need much." The woman gave a faint smile, soft but confident, and added, "We would be grateful for anything." Her words were gentle, but they carried strength, as though she was used to being turned away yet never begged. The boss felt his pride rising. Around him, he sensed the wealthy customers watching closely, some with smirks, others with frowns, all waiting for him to draw the line. He could not let them see weakness, not tonight. "I said we are full," he repeated, his tone sharper this time, and he gestured toward the door. A few guests chuckled under their breath, satisfied with the decision. But the couple did not move. The man stood straighter, his hands resting calmly at his sides, his eyes holding the boss's gaze with quiet intensity. There was no anger in his face, no embarrassment, but something about the way he looked back made the boss uneasy. It was as though this man was measuring him, weighing his soul in silence. The boss cleared his throat and stepped closer, lowering his voice so only they could hear. "This place is not for everyone," he said coldly, hoping they would take the hint. The woman's eyes lifted, and for the first time, she spoke with a steady tone that sent a strange chill through him. "We know exactly where we are," she said, her voice calm but strong, "and we came here for a reason." Her words hung in the air, simple but powerful, like a secret no one else could see. The boss frowned, confused, but before he could reply, a waiter hurried to his side, whispering in his ear that one table at the far end had just been vacated. The boss looked across the room and saw it, the smallest table, tucked away near the back, hidden behind a column. He hesitated. Allowing them to sit there would quiet the whispers, but it would also place them inside his restaurant, among his finest guests. His pride told him to send them away, yet curiosity tugged at his mind. Why did they speak with such calm? Why did they not beg, plead, or argue like others he had turned away before? Something in their manner unsettled him, like a mystery hidden in plain sight. At last, he forced a cold smile and said, "Very well. Follow me." He led them to the small table, his steps stiff, his heart beating faster than he expected. The couple followed without hesitation, moving gracefully, as though they belonged after all. The other guests watched with narrowed eyes, their whispers sharp, their disapproval thick in the air. The boss ignored them, though inside, his mind spun with questions. He pulled out their chairs, more out of habit than kindness, and as they sat, he noticed how carefully they moved, every gesture controlled, every motion quiet but deliberate. It was not the clumsy behavior he expected from outsiders. No, it was something else, something more refined. The waiter brought menus, but the couple did not open them. The man looked up at the boss and said softly, "We trust you. Bring us what you believe is best." The boss blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever said that to him before, not even his wealthiest guests who came here for prestige. For a moment, he hesitated, then gave a stiff nod and walked away, though their words echoed in his head. At the counter, his staff whispered nervously about the couple, wondering why they were allowed to stay. One young waiter muttered, "They don't look like they can pay." Another added, "Maybe they're here to cause trouble." The boss silenced them with a sharp glare, though deep down, he wondered the same. He ordered the kitchen to prepare a special dish, one not even on the menu, something that would test them. As the food was being made, he glanced across the room again. The couple sat quietly, their hands folded, their eyes occasionally meeting as though they shared unspoken thoughts. They did not fidget, did not whisper, did not look nervous. They simply waited with patience, their calmness standing out even more against the tense atmosphere. The boss could not shake the feeling that they were here for more than food. He told himself he would watch closely, ready to act if they caused the slightest problem. But inside, a strange unease grew. Who were they really, and why did their presence feel heavier than anything he had faced before? Suspense thickened in the air, and the boss realized this was only the beginning of a night that would test everything he thought he knew. The kitchen buzzed with activity as chefs prepared the special dish, unaware of the silent drama unfolding at the far corner table. The boss hovered nearby, arms crossed, his eyes flicking between the couple and the kitchen staff as if his gaze alone could control the outcome of the night. Every movement of the couple seemed deliberate, calm, and patient, their hands resting neatly on the table, their eyes occasionally meeting with a subtle understanding that made the boss uneasy. The waiters whispered nervously, sharing quiet speculation, while the guests continued to glance over, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment. When the first plate arrived, the boss followed closely behind, eager to witness their reaction. The dish was a carefully crafted masterpiece, a fusion of flavors and presentation that could impress even the most discerning critics. The couple looked at it briefly, then smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and the man lifted his fork with quiet grace, while the woman followed suit, her movements calm and precise. The boss felt a twinge of irritation. He had expected or, perhaps exaggerated praise, maybe even a bit of flattery. Instead, they simply ate, savoring each bite slowly, as though they were taking in not just the taste, but the care and effort behind it. It was a quiet defiance that unsettled him more than a loud complaint ever could. As they finished, the woman looked up and spoke softly, "This is wonderful. Thank you." Her tone carried no arrogance, no superiority, just sincere gratitude, yet it struck the boss in a way he could not explain. He had heard thousands of words of thanks in his career, but none had left him so unsettled. He turned to the staff, giving a subtle nod, a silent command to watch, because he sensed that whatever was happening at that table was not ordinary. Meanwhile, the couple continued their quiet conversation, their words polite, measured, and thoughtful, discussing the flavors, the textures, and the care that went into preparing the meal. The boss tried to dismiss it, telling himself it was just a couple appreciating food, nothing more, but the unease in his chest refused to fade. Then came the moment that truly shocked him. The woman placed her napkin down, leaned slightly forward, and said something so simple, so calm, that the words carried across the room like a quiet storm. "We trust the people who serve with heart more than the ones who judge by wealth." Silence seemed to descend over the nearby tables. The boss froze, his mind racing. Did she just imply that he had judged them unfairly? That he had looked down on them? He opened his mouth, but no words came. Around him, the guests shifted uncomfortably, some glancing at each other, unsure how to respond. The couple, still calm, smiled politely and continued their meal, their demeanor completely unchanged, yet the weight of their words lingered in the air, pressing on everyone in the room. The boss's pride, built over decades, felt as if it were cracking under the pressure of this quiet judgment. He had expelled them earlier, had looked at them as unworthy, yet here they were, patient, polite, and confident, their calmness more powerful than any insult he could have thrown. His staff noticed his discomfort and whispered among themselves, saying he had never been so silent, so unsure, and the boss realized that for the first time in years, someone had shaken him without raising a hand, without shouting, without demanding anything at all. The couple finished the meal slowly, savoring each bite, never rushing, never showing the slightest sign of impatience. The man nodded slightly toward the boss as they prepared to leave, a small gesture of respect that carried an unspoken message. The boss, still frozen near the counter, watched them rise and pay quietly, leaving the exact amount for the meal, nothing extra, nothing less, their manners flawless and their presence commanding in the quietest way possible. As they walked toward the door, the room seemed to shift, whispers spread quickly, guests murmuring about the calm couple who had arrived in rags yet carried themselves like people of power. The boss felt a strange mixture of fear, admiration, and guilt all at once. Who were they really? What was it about them that made his restaurant, his pride, and even the opinions of his wealthy customers seem small and insignificant? The couple opened the door, paused for a moment, and looked back at him, their eyes calm, almost knowing, before stepping outside into the night. The boss's hands trembled slightly, and he realized that something had changed within him. This night, which began as ordinary, had turned into a lesson he could not ignore, a challenge to the way he saw the world and the people in it. The couple had come quietly, behaved politely, and yet left a mark stronger than any criticism, any loud confrontation ever could. Suspense lingered in the restaurant long after they were gone, and the boss knew deep inside that this was not the end, but only the beginning of a story he would never forget, a story that would soon teach him the true meaning of respect, humility, and unexpected greatness. The next day, the restaurant felt different, almost quiet in a way the boss could not explain. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, reflecting off the polished floors, but there was no hum of anticipation, no chatter of eager diners waiting to taste his creations. The boss stood behind the counter, arms crossed, staring out at the empty tables, his mind replaying the previous night again and again. The memory of the couple, the way they had entered, the calm in their eyes, the simple politeness that had unsettled him, refused to fade. He tried to focus on his plans for the day, checking the reservations, reviewing the menu, instructing his staff, but every word and every instruction seemed hollow compared to the memory of that quiet, patient couple. His waiters, usually bustling with energy and conversation, were unusually subdued. One young server leaned toward another and whispered, "Did you see them last night? They didn't even argue when the boss told them to leave." The other nodded, adding quietly, "And they ate like kings, without demanding anything. I heard someone outside saying they might be important people." The boss caught the tail end of their conversation, his chest tightening, and he called them over sharply. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, trying to sound stern. The waiters stammered, glancing at each other nervously, and finally one whispered, "Sir, people are saying the couple from last night, they might be well known. Famous, in a way, not for money, but for what they do." The boss frowned deeply, his heart beginning to beat faster. "Famous? For what?" The waiter hesitated. "Charity, sir, helping people, building schools, feeding families. Some say they've changed the lives of thousands of people in the city." The boss laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the quiet restaurant. "Impossible," he said. "Those people looked poor, ordinary. How could anyone like that be famous?" But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his mind. Something about the calm confidence of the couple, the way they had handled themselves, their politeness and quiet dignity, now seemed connected to this rumor. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a mistake by sending them away. That simple act of judgment, deciding they did not belong, was beginning to feel heavier than he could bear. Later that day, as he walked through the dining room, a delivery boy approached him and whispered something so softly he had to lean down to hear it. "Sir, some customers are calling your restaurant asking if the couple will come back. They say they want to meet them." The boss froze, staring at the young man. The restaurant suddenly seemed smaller, the polished tables and glittering chandeliers like a cage around him. Customers who once admired his authority now seemed to have shifted their attention elsewhere, curious about the couple he had dismissed. He returned to the kitchen and stood silently, thinking back to the woman's words, "We trust the people who serve with heart more than the ones who judge by wealth." Those words echoed endlessly in his mind, haunting him like a lesson he had been too proud to learn. He watched his staff bustling around him, their energy different, cautious, as if they too sensed that last night had been extraordinary. The boss realized that the couple's calmness, their politeness, and their quiet strength had left a mark, not only on him, but on everyone in the room. He walked to the corner where the couple had sat, touching the empty table, and felt a strange emptiness, a sense of unfinished business that weighed heavier than any missed reservation or mistake in the kitchen. Whispers from outside reached him through the open windows. "They're the ones who built the orphanage downtown, the ones who feed hundreds every week. I heard they helped that family after the fire, and no one knew who they were." The boss's stomach tightened. The stories kept coming, piling on top of each other, painting an image of the couple that did not match the shabby clothes he remembered. How could these humble, quiet people do so much good and remain so unnoticed? And more importantly, why had he judged them so quickly, so harshly, without looking deeper? The thought gnawed at him, making him feel smaller than he had in years. By the afternoon, the restaurant was unusually empty. His regular wealthy clients stayed away, some perhaps curious, others perhaps skeptical. The boss paced behind the counter, unable to sit still, thinking about what he had done and what he might do if the couple returned. Every memory of the previous night grew sharper, the calm look in the man's eyes, the polite nod of the woman, the way they had eaten as if they belonged there, and yet in that belonging they had taught him a lesson he could not ignore. The staff noticed the change in him, the unusual quiet in his movements, the way he stared out the door as if expecting them to appear at any moment. And in that silence, a new suspense grew in the restaurant, a tension heavier than the aroma of food or the clatter of dishes, the question of what would happen if the couple returned, and whether he would have the courage to face them with the humility he had never shown before. The next evening arrived with a quiet tension in the air, the restaurant's usual buzz replaced by a nervous anticipation that the staff could not explain. The boss stood behind the counter, arms folded, eyes darting toward the entrance every few seconds, his mind replaying the events of the previous night over and over. He could not forget the couple, their calmness, their politeness, the way they had eaten without complaint or demand, and most of all, the words of the woman that had lodged in his mind, "We trust the people who serve with heart more than the ones who judge by wealth." All day he had wondered if they would return, whether they would forgive him, or if they would even bother to show up again. And then, just as the evening crowd began to trickle in, the door opened, and there they were. The couple walked in slowly, dressed simply but neatly, their calm presence immediately drawing the eyes of everyone in the room. The boss's stomach tightened, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and anticipation pressing down on him. His staff froze, whispering among themselves, unsure of what to do, while some customers paused mid-conversation, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. The couple smiled politely at the host, who quickly led them to the same corner table, and they nodded gently toward the boss, their eyes calm yet full of meaning. For a moment, he felt exposed, as though his pride and judgment had been laid bare in front of the entire restaurant. He had expected confrontation, anger, maybe a demand for apology, but there was none. The couple's calm confidence was more powerful than any loud argument he could imagine. The woman spoke softly, addressing him directly. "We hope to return," she said, her voice steady, warm, and commanding in the quietest way possible. "We believe in people who can learn from their mistakes." Her words struck him like a blow he could not dodge. The boss felt his face flush, his hands tightening into fists as he struggled to find words. He wanted to apologize, but the humility he felt was unfamiliar and heavy. He nodded slowly, almost unable to speak. The man added gently, "We are here not for judgment, but for understanding. We wish to share something with you." The boss motioned for them to sit, though his mind raced. Every eye in the restaurant seemed to be on them, and the suspense was thick enough to cut with a knife. As they sat, they began to explain who they really were. They were not ordinary people, as he had assumed. They were the founders of a citywide charity, known for feeding the poor, building schools, helping orphan children, and transforming communities quietly, without demanding recognition. The boss listened, disbelief mixing with awe, as the stories unfolded. They spoke of families saved from hunger, communities rebuilt after disasters, and children given hope when the world had abandoned them. They did not boast, they merely shared the truth in calm, matter-of-fact tones. The boss's chest tightened further. He realized that he had judged them harshly, had let his pride blind him, had thrown away the chance to honor people who were greater than he could have imagined. The realization was painful, almost unbearable, yet it carried a lesson he could not ignore. The couple continued, explaining that their visit the previous night had not been about food, but about testing hearts, seeing who could treat others with respect regardless of appearance or wealth. Their eyes held a gentle authority, not anger, and he felt as though they could see every thought and hesitation in his mind. For the first time, the boss truly understood the power of humility, of patience, and of quiet strength. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement, knowing that he had been taught a lesson he would never forget. The couple smiled, not in triumph, but in calm encouragement, and the staff felt the atmosphere shift. Customers who had entered Judgment Ally now watched in silence, some leaning in to listen, captivated by the revelation unfolding in the corner of the restaurant. The boss felt a determination rising within him, a desire to change, to make amends, to use the lesson he had learned for something greater than pride or reputation. As the couple prepared to leave, they gave him a final nod, their calm eyes full of meaning. "Remember, greatness is measured by how you treat others, not by what you have." The words lingered long after the door closed behind them, echoing in the boss's mind and in the empty corners of the restaurant. That night, he stayed late, walking through his dining room, touching tables and chairs, thinking about the couple's words, their calm presence, and the impact of small actions. He realized that this encounter had changed him, reshaped his understanding of kindness, respect, and true greatness. The suspense of the night was not about what the couple had eaten or said, but about the awakening within the boss, a transformation that would ripple through his restaurant, his staff, and eventually, the community he served. And in the quiet, after the last dish was cleaned and the lights dimmed, he made a promise to himself. He would never judge by appearance again, and he would make his restaurant a place where every person, regardless of who they were, would be welcomed with respect and dignity. The next day, the restaurant was filled with an unusual energy, as if everyone sensed that the events of the previous night had begun to change something bigger than themselves. The boss arrived early, still replaying the couple's calmness and the weight of their words in his mind. The memory of the polite nod, the way they had sat quietly while he judged them, and the final words about greatness and kindness made him feel both ashamed and inspired. As he walked through the dining area, preparing for the day, he noticed whispers among the staff, and even a few customers who had returned to inquire about the mysterious couple. It seemed the story of their visit had spread quickly, carried from one person to another, growing in awe and curiosity. Then, just as the morning rush began, the couple appeared again, but this time there was a subtle difference in their presence. Their clothes were simple yet clean and neat, and their calm demeanor now carried an unspoken confidence that made everyone stop and notice. The boss felt his chest tighten, a mix of anticipation and nervousness flooding him as he watched them approach. They requested a private room, and he led them there, his hands slightly trembling. The moment they were seated, the woman spoke softly, her voice steady and warm. "We hope you are ready to understand who we really are," she said. The boss's stomach sank, and he nodded, unsure what to expect. The couple began to explain that they were not ordinary citizens, but the founders of a citywide charity known for feeding thousands of families, building schools, and helping the most vulnerable people quietly, without seeking recognition. They had traveled in plain clothes to see how people judged others by appearances alone, to find out who acted with true heart rather than pride. The boss listened, disbelief and awe alternating in his mind. The quiet humility of the couple, the sheer scale of their good deeds, and the calm dignity they carried without arrogance made him realize the gravity of his earlier mistake. Every harsh word, every judgment he had passed, seemed small and foolish compared to the lives they had touched. He felt an unexpected mix of fear and admiration. They had not come to embarrass him, not to demand anything, but simply to teach, and in doing so, they had reminded him of the true meaning of respect, kindness, and human greatness. Their calmness, patience, and quiet authority overwhelmed him more than any confrontation could have. The staff listened as well, captivated, and even the other customers who had been allowed to witness the conversation paused to absorb the revelation. The couple smiled, not triumphantly, but with gentle encouragement, as they explained that true value was measured not by wealth, status, or appearances, but by actions and the impact one leaves on the world. The boss felt a deep transformation beginning inside him, a shift in perspective that made him see not just the couple, but everyone in his restaurant differently. For the first time, he understood that his judgments had been shallow, and that true leadership and respect came from recognizing the worth of every person. He bowed slightly in acknowledgement, a gesture of humility he had never offered before, and the couple returned the nod, their eyes calm but full of meaning. As they rose to leave, they handed him a small card with information about their charity, saying softly, "We invite you to join us. Help others, and you will discover a greatness you cannot measure alone." The boss felt a lump in his throat, his pride now replaced with determination and purpose. When the door closed behind them, the silence in the private room was heavy, filled with the lessons he had just learned. He stood alone for a moment, absorbing the weight of their visit, the humility of their demeanor, and the quiet authority they had carried without a single demand. That night, he reflected on everything, the judgment he had passed, the calm courage of the couple, and the opportunity to change not just his restaurant, but the lives of people who came through its doors. He decided then that he would not only make amends but also use his resources, influence, and heart to help others, just as the couple had quietly done. The transformation was complete. The boss understood that true greatness was not in wealth or power, but in humility, service, and the courage to respect others regardless of appearance. By the time he left the restaurant, he felt lighter, purposeful, and ready to share the lessons he had learned with his staff and customers alike. The suspense that had haunted the restaurant, the mystery of who the couple was, why they had come, and what they wanted had now been resolved in a way that would inspire him for the rest of his life. The city outside continued unaware of the quiet revolution that had just occurred within the walls of the small, high-end restaurant, where a boss who once judged harshly now prepared to lead with heart, compassion, and humility, forever changed by a couple who had walked in silently and left a mark far greater than any dish or decoration could achieve.